Hello and welcome to your October 22nd/23rd asynchronous day. What we are doing today is pronoun-antecedent agreement, and you're going to take a quiz on this topic at the end of this class. So our objectives are right here. So we are going to learn how to ensure pronoun-antecedent agreement in straightforward and more complex situations. And we're going to use the correct word between its and your, those different spellings of those words. I've noticed this is an issue in some of your writing sometimes. So we're going to just make sure we know the difference. There's a couple questions on that on the quiz as well. So your homework, you have no new homework. This is the same homework that was assigned last week before fall break. So this is still your homework. You're finishing reading and annotating through the end of page 7 in Notes of a Native Son and answering the questions in the fall break homework document. This is due Monday for orange classes and Wednesday for blue classes. One note on grading for this lesson. So I'm going to be grading your completion of the ed puzzle lesson, like this video and the questions in the video. I'm not going to be grading what you do in this document. However, you can use the notes you make in this document while you take the quiz at the end of this lesson. So like as we go over these questions, I encourage you to copy the answers and the notes in this document, even though you're not going to be graded on it. This will be a useful tool for you for the quiz. All right, so let's go back and review and do some warming up. So right now you're going to fill in the definitions of these vocabulary words. So if you don't remember what a pronoun is or an antecedent is, you can go back to Unit 2, Lesson 1, which was from October 8th or 9th. The classwork in there has the definitions of these words. So go ahead right now and fill in those definitions. I'm asking this in the ed puzzle. Again, I encourage you to also copy the definitions into this document. Okay, so hopefully you remembered that a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. So examples would be he, she, it, they, ours, hers, theirs, right, etc. All of those words are pronouns. The antecedent of the pronoun is the noun that the pronoun is replacing, right? So instead of saying, for example, a person's name over and over again, you would use she or he or they instead of just repeating their name over and over again. Or if I were talking about like my cell phone, I could say, instead of saying like, I dropped my phone the other day, my phone was cracked, I had to take my phone to the repair place. You would say, I dropped my phone the other day, it was cracked, I took it to the repair place, right? So we're replacing the noun, the antecedent, with the pronoun. All right, so for each of these questions, you're going to answer this question in the ed puzzle. I encourage you to do this in the document as well. So you're figuring out which sentence contains an error in pronoun-antecedent agreement. So do number 1 right now. Okay, so the answer to number 1 is B, because we see that we have these pronouns, she, and them. And she are fine because that's replacing Amika, the antecedent. But the issue where we have disagreement is where we see the word them. So highlight that pronoun. And then we have her backpack is the antecedent, right? She realized she left them on the bus that morning, but it's talking about her backpack. So them is a plural pronoun. Instead, we would want to say it would be the correct pronoun. So that's the sentence with disagreement, pronoun antecedent disagreement. All right, go ahead and do number 2. Okay, so for number 2, the answer was A. It is the pronoun here, but theme statements is the antecedent. So instead of it, this should be they. because theme statements is plural. And then do number 3. Okay, so for number 3, the answer was C, and this is a real student example, very common issue. So it says, Brian Jones uses character foils and tone to illustrate that there is discrimination in America, but not to judge other people by its skin color. So when we're talking about people, first of all, people, plural, right? And then we don't use the word it to describe a person, right? We would use their, to not judge other people by their skin color. Okay. Finally, do number 4. All right. So instead of it shows, so we have pronouns are interesting because they show how language changes all the time, right? We're talking about the pronouns is the antecedent. So the pronouns are the antecedent. So the pronoun that we would use to replace pronouns would be they. Okay, so if you want to copy these steps into your document, I encourage you to do that so that you can use these steps on the quiz. So the first step to ensure pronoun antecedent agreement is identify the pronouns in the sentence. Usually on this quiz and on these kinds of questions on the ACT, they're just going to give you a bunch of options for pronouns. So you don't really need to do that, right? So like here we had they, she, it. So we don't really need to identify the pronouns in the sentence on a quiz question, but this would be like for your own writing. If you wanted to check your own pronoun antecedent agreement, you'd identify where you have used pronouns in the sentence, right? So we would highlight those. Then you identify the antecedent by asking who or what is this pronoun referring to, right? Who or what is this pronoun replacing? Who or what is doing what the pronoun is doing, right? So in this example up here, we know that we should use, we know the antecedent is pronouns because they are the ones doing the showing, right? They show. So then we need to make sure that the pronoun matches the antecedent by asking yourself, so if the antecedent is a person, what pronouns do they use, right? Is this a male or a female or someone who uses non-binary pronouns like they? And then is the antecedent singular or plural? And if there is no antecedent or it's unclear what it is, should I just use the actual noun instead of a pronoun? So we're going to look at a couple of examples where that's the case, where we don't really know what the antecedent is. So in that case, usually we would just want to use the actual noun, the name of the noun itself, instead of using a pronoun because we don't know what the antecedent is. So we can't really use a pronoun to replace it. Okay, so let's follow these steps for this first question. So for this first question, identify the pronouns, right? We know we're talking about this, it, they, she, them. So we've found the pronouns. So now we have to identify the antecedent by asking who or what is this pronoun referring to. So I'm going to read this passage, and then I'm going to have you guys identify the antecedent. So during the summer of 1988, I watched Yellowstone National Park go up in flames. In June, fires ignited by lightning had been allowed to burn unsuppressed because park officials expected that the usual summer rains would come and douse the flames. However, blank never came. So we have to ask ourselves, what never came? What never came? So that's the antecedent, right? We ask ourselves, what never came? What is this pronoun referring to? So in the Ed puzzle, answer that question. So what is the antecedent? What never came? Okay, so if you said summer rains, you would be correct. So the antecedent of the pronoun is summer rains. So then we have to make sure that our pronoun matches our antecedent. So is this antecedent a person? No, right? It's summer rains. Is the antecedent singular or plural? So summer rains, we have that S on the end. This is plural. So then, if we know our antecedent is plural, what should our pronoun be? Go ahead and enter your answer into the Ed puzzle. Okay, so yes, if you said be, they, then you are correct, right? However, the summer rains, they never came. They never came. Okay, so let's go through one more together, go through those steps. So the chameleon changes its color in just a few minutes to whatever surface blank happens to be sitting on. So we have to ask ourselves, who or what is this referring to, right? So we know based on this passage, who or what are we talking about? So enter your answer into the Edpuzzle. What is the antecedent of this pronoun? So if you said the chameleon, you would be correct. So the chameleon is the antecedent. And then based on that, what should the pronoun be? So yes, the answer is B, it, right? We don't know the gender or the sex of this chameleon in this passage. We're just talking about a chameleon in general. And we had earlier, the chameleon changes its color in just a few minutes to whatever surface it happens to be sitting on. So it's already been referred to as it, so that makes it easy, right? We can just use the same pronoun, it. Okay, you guys are going to now answer these questions, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So do that right now, and then we'll go through the answers after you answer them. All right, so for number 3, an avid golfer, Dr. Grant invented and patented the tee in 1899 before blank invention. So we know we're talking about Dr. Grant. So his is the only pronoun that's an option because we know it's a person and it's singular, right? So his is our pronoun. So our answer is no change. The antecedent, Dr. Grant. Okay, number 4. We are talking about the U.S. Navy is the antecedent. The U.S. Navy deployed its, right? We're talking singular, and the U.S. Navy is a thing, right? So U.S. Navy is the antecedent. Its first undersea habitat. Although she narrowly lost bids for the U.S. Senate in 1982 and 1986, Harriet Wood's campaign earned her national recognition. So the antecedent is Harriet Woods. Number 6, you walk into a clothing store and ask for a dress shirt, a simple enough thing to do. But what if you are a bilingual speaker in a bilingual city such as Miami? How would you, right, we're talking about you, decide which language to use? So in this case, we're using you because the sentence is already talking about you, right? So the antecedent is actually you as well, right? That's just who it's talking about. Cues may be found in the speaker's immediate surroundings. Hearing a Venezuelan singer's latest recording being played on blank sound system might prompt a bilingual speaker to use Spanish. So this is a case where we're asking ourselves, whose sound system? What sound system are we talking about? We don't know. In this passage, there is no antecedent, right? It's not clear whose sound system we're talking about. So instead of using a pronoun, we would want to just use the noun that we're talking about. So there is no antecedent in this passage, right? So we're going to use just the noun. Hearing a Venezuelan singer's latest recording being played on a store's sound system might prompt a bilingual speaker to use Spanish, right? Because this pronoun does not have an antecedent. So it would be confusing to use a pronoun because your reader wouldn't know what you're talking about. Okay, and then number 8, we have a similar situation. So as the 3 plants grow, the corn stalks support the bean tendrils, while the beans fix nitrogen in the soil, which fertilizes the corn. Their broad leaves provide shade for the other 2 plants' root systems and help retain soil moisture while discouraging weed growth. We don't know, so we have 3 plants up here. We don't know which plant we're talking about, right? So we can't use a pronoun because that would be confusing to the reader. We don't know whose broad leaves we're talking about. So our only option is the actual noun. The squash plant's broad leaves. So none. There is no antecedent again. So that's why we need to use just the noun, right? The noun that is given as an option instead of using a pronoun, because it's confusing otherwise. So stamp that in the Edpuzzle here, and then we'll stamp it in the classwork document. What if there is no antecedent or it's unclear what the antecedent is? What do I do? All right, so you should have said something like, if there's no antecedent or it's unclear what the antecedent is, just use the actual noun instead of a pronoun, right? Because it would be confusing to use a pronoun if we don't know what the pronoun is referring to. Okay, so next little just mini lesson here. It's and its, so we know it is a pronoun, right? And your, these are pronouns, but they have different spellings, right? There's different ways that you can spell these things depending on the situation. So the one thing that you need to remember to figure out what version of this word, what spelling you should use, is that if you see the apostrophe in one of these words, the apostrophe, that little air comma, as some people call it, so IT apostrophe S, YOU apostrophe RE. When you see that apostrophe, that means that it's a contraction, which is two words being combined into one. So the apostrophe stands for the letter that is being taken out. So IT apostrophe S means it is, right? Because we're combining those two words. We're taking out that extra I and using an apostrophe instead. So IT apostrophe S means it is. And then YOU apostrophe RE means you are, right? Because we're combining those two words. We're taking out the A in R, and we're just using the apostrophe instead. That's called a contraction. Okay, so then the other versions are the possessive versions. So ITS with no apostrophe means belonging to it, right? It's like we'll go into some examples. And then YOUR with no apostrophe means belonging to you, right? That is your phone over there. All right, so let's go through some practice. So you're going to highlight the correct word in each of these sentences. So do this practice in the Edpuzzle. Okay, so let's go through the answers. So is that your sandwich? We know we are talking about possessive, right? Is that sandwich belonging to you? Does that sandwich belong to you? So that means we would want to use YOUR, no apostrophe. Don't worry about that movie. It's not that scary. So are we saying, is it belonging to it, or are we saying it is, right? We know we're saying it is not that scary. So we want to use the version with the apostrophe. And then this one, you're really not going to eat that sandwich? Are we saying belonging to you, or are we saying you are, right? So we know in this sentence, we are saying you are really not going to eat that sandwich. So we want to use the version with the apostrophe. The movie will probably win a few Oscars because its cast is so good. So are we saying because it is cast is so good? No, right? We're saying the cast of it, the cast belonging to it, that movie, is so good. So we are going to use the version without the apostrophe. So an easy way to kind of check for this is like substitute in it is. And if it doesn't make any sense to say it is, right? Because it is cast is so good, that doesn't make any sense. So we know we want to use the possessive version. The dough won't rise correctly if its yeast isn't active enough. So are we saying if it is yeast isn't active enough, or if the yeast belonging to it, the yeast of the dough, isn't active enough? So we know it is does not make sense. So we're using ITS, no apostrophe. As your friend, I don't think you should do this. So are we saying as you are friend? No, right? We're saying your friend, like the friend that belongs to you. As your friend, no apostrophe. The bread didn't rise correctly, but it is delicious anyway, right? So that means we want to use the version with the apostrophe. Okay, So again, you can use this document to help you as you take the quiz. I'm going to link the quiz into this assignment in Google Classroom. So at this point, review the notes and the practice, and then go ahead and take the quiz. So the Ed puzzle needs to be done, and the quiz needs to be taken by the end of the day today. And then your homework is the same thing that was assigned before fall break, no new homework. So again, make sure you're getting that homework done by next week. All right, and that is it. Have a great weekend. Feel free to email me with any questions before you take the quiz, not after you take the quiz. Remember, if you don't do well on the quiz, you can come and do corrections in office hours next week. I encourage you to do that if you are struggling with this. But right now, again, feel free to use these notes as you take the quiz, and good luck and have a good weekend. And I will see you next week.